everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fridays with Fawn. I'm Fawn Lopez, your host, and also publisher emeritus of Modern Healthcare. Joining me today is a wonderful friend and a leader, Chief Market Solutions Officer at Medline Industry, Inc., Sue MacInnes. Sue, I'm delighted to have you as my guest today. And we've been friends for a long time now. You are one of the most creative and innovative people that I know. I'm always amazed by your sense of passion and can-do attitude. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon. Notice the sun glaring in. So this is a fun way to spend it.
Absolutely. So, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes just talking about your career and your perspective on healthcare. So let's get started, should we?
Sure.
Okay. So you are with Medline Industries, Inc., which is a global manufacturer and distributor. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And revenue size is over $20 billion, and you have over 20,000 employees. So my first question to you is this. Why did you choose a career in healthcare?
Well, we're going to have a lot of transparency and honesty in this discussion, and maybe a little bit too much. But to tell you the truth, I didn't choose a career in healthcare. I have to tell you, it happened by accident. And some of the historical things amongst all of us, we go down paths that I consider now like a stream. You hit a rock and you turn, you hit a branch and you turn, and you really don't know where you're going. And so I always had an affinity when I was a little kid for baking and cooking and everything that your mom or your grandmother would do in the kitchen. And had my own little bakery business when I was around 12. So that was the business side of it. But then, I ended up with anorexia nervosa. And that was about the time when I think my aunt saw an article and said, "Oh, I know what you have." And those people, the people that usually get that, are very type A, driven, straight A students. And I think it was like, I would get straight A's, I would do so well. And it was kind of my way of controlling. And, I wasn't heavy. I was like 110 pounds when I was 12, but the doctor said at a Girl Scout camp, physical, the weight charts say this because they were so restrictive back then. And then my normal demeanor is, okay, fine, I'll show you. And I kept losing weight and probably got down to like 85. And it was a kind of traumatic, but a self-awareness moment. And then when I was going to go to college, my dad insisted that my sister and I had to know what we were going to do before we went to college. And it's really hard. You don't know what you like things. I really wanted to go on Broadway and be a Broadway actress. And my dad said, you have to have a career and make money. So I put that aside as a hobby. And my sister was in nursing school, and I went to some, get together there. And there was a dietitian there that I just thought was beautiful and knowledgeable. And I thought, well, I think I'll be her. So I decided to go into dietetics and nutrition education. So it wasn't like, oh, I want to be a doctor or a nurse or whatever. It wasn't because I had some great calling to be with patients. It really was, I liked food, I liked dietetics, so I did that. But the interesting thing, Fawn, is that might be where I started. But as you went down that stream, things morphed and changed.
Yes, definitely. And I can't tell you how courageous it was that you share that very personal story experience with us. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Sue, you have been at Medline for over 39 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. You must have started when you were 12.
Well, that's
congratulations.
Thank you.
So during the last 39 years, you have held a number of roles at Medline. Would you please tell us about your career path and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, once I graduated from college, I went to a dietetic internship in Northern Jersey at Perth Amboy General Hospital. That was like a route to get registered as a dietitian. And then I got married and moved to Colorado and worked at Press Denver Hospital. And while I was there, back in the day, you would see ads in the paper, a job ad. And I saw this job ad that was an immediate move to El Paso, Texas, or not, I'm sorry, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so we decided, I interviewed, it was for Ross Labs, and it was a sales position where they wanted clinical professionals. And because they did tube feedings, et cetera, and supplements, they were hiring dietitians. I got to tell you, there must be a part of me that likes the glamorous life, because I thought, wow, salesperson, you have a company car, you get to meet people. So we moved to Albuquerque, never had been there before, and was very successful, calling on hospitals and all types of things, and got pregnant. And my husband, my husband and I are both from Philadelphia, our family. And if you've been to Albuquerque, it's very brown. We would go back to visit Pennsylvania, and we'd say, wow, it's so green. And so I think my husband said, our parents are getting older, we should move back east. And so here I was loving my job. I'm 7 months pregnant, and we moved to Maryland, close enough to Philly, but not too close. And literally had to get another doctor, had a baby. And I was supposed to get a job with Ross, and there was market share problems. And they said, hold on. I called, they said, it's going to be a year. So I started interviewing. And the interviewing process was probably the first time in my life. It never occurred to me that being a female or, being a professional had anything to do with my gender orientation. I was really never thought of it. And so when I was interviewing, I would interview with all these different companies, and there were opportunities in long-term care and in hospitals, but I was so used to the sales rep type thing. I interviewed for pharmaceutical companies. I'd get so far along and they dropped me, like ghost me. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And finally I realized it must be because I have a baby. And so when I interviewed for Medline, I didn't follow any rules because I was kind of exasperated. I was a top salesperson, and all of a sudden I'm struggling. And so I went to the interview, and I thought my mom's going to kill me anyway, because it's not a dietetics position. They do medical supplies and textiles. And I went to the interview and I said, listen, I just want to let you know I have this 6-month-old baby. So if there's a problem, we shouldn't even talk. It ended up, when I got back home, the recruiter said I was their number one choice. So I figured I'll just stay here for 18 months and then I don't have to pay the recruiter. And I'm still here. So I got heavily involved in the post-acute side. And because of my enteral feeding background, we were doing a lot of third-party Medicare billing of tube feedings. And I became like the number one representative in the country with Medicare. And they asked, well, they didn't ask me. I asked if I could go to Chicago and take over the reimbursement and Medicare department. And we did. Packed up everybody, moved to Chicago, and had some real life lessons during that. And then there was a bid for Olson Kimberly Clark for home care. So I and a couple others developed the home care program. So now I had the reimbursement program, the home care program, which was an entirely new thing and very innovative. And then the craziest thing happened. Andy Mills, the president of the company, asked me to lunch. And I'm not a lunch person, because when you have 3 kids and a husband and 2 cats and you're working all the time, my schedule would be work every minute of the day, get home, spend a few hours with the kids, give them baths, put them to bed by 8 o'clock so I could work till midnight. And so to go to lunch. So I go to lunch with Andy, and he tells me, you know what, we have a really good running game, but we don't have a good passing game. And I also know nothing about football. I know more now, but I didn't even know what that meant. And to him, it meant that we're really good on feet on the street, but the programs and the things I was developing in these other areas, if we could put that into the acute care side and the rest of the company, it would give us so much more strength as a company. To me, I had never, ever been asked to take a role. This was really instrumental. But on the other side of it, they wanted me to be the chief marketing officer. And I had no marketing background. I didn't know what brand meant. I didn't know what any of the words meant. And I was so excited, but I really wasn't qualified for the job. So that summer, I read 50 books on marketing, and I made a list of what I would do if I had that role, what I felt. And the thing because I had a clinical background and because we interact with clinicians and physicians all the time, the thing that I thought was the most important was that the company would embrace the clinical side. I felt almost like we were, a Me Too company. We would develop a product, make it less expensive overseas and sell it. We were very transactional. We were very much like making a deal in the basement to sell products. And if we could embrace clinicians that are making the decisions, and if we could really understand healthcare and do some problem solving, we could really change the face and the brand of the company. And that was back in 2003. So it's kind of a miracle. I got an opportunity to kind of fulfill my dreams in this job that I knew nothing about and had so much fear and insecurity. So I did that for 10 years, multiple things. It was really exciting. And then moved into the Chief Market Solutions Officer, which, because I developed so many C-suite relationships and had done so many different programs, my focus was entirely on innovation and doing white papers and doing roundtables and groups and really developing a different level of relationship with health systems. So there you go.
Wow. There's so much packed in that.
Sorry.
Answer. No, I loved it. So I'm gonna pick apart some of it as we go along, if that's okay. So you said something that was really interesting. It sounds to me that you said, I've never been asked to take a role. So, and then knowing you we've known each other for 20 years? That from my understanding of your role and what you do at Medline, you have always designed your own positions, responsibilities. And tell me more about, you've never been asked to take a role at Medline.
Yeah, but I did.
Until you had that lunch with Andy.
Yeah, I think people think that I'll do a good job and someone will recognize me and they'll offer me a job. And, listen, when being in sales is almost like, timing someone in a relay. It is what it is. You sell something, you get paid for what you do. It's very factual. And that's an easy way to compare people. But, going into something like the chief marketing officer, I didn't know what it meant. I just knew in my heart what I thought was missing. And I can't tell you how strongly I feel that you have to be an expert in your field. Yeah. I read the Federal Register 40 times. I would look at a sentence and say, what in the world does this mean? And figure it out. Like, nobody handed me the recipe and said, these are the things you need to know about healthcare, and these are the words you need to say. I can remember being on flights where I would make lists of acronyms, and I test myself on 50 acronyms because it's really hard to be fluent in an acronym. And every portion of healthcare has a whole different set of acronyms. And so I had to be kind of fluent. It was like learning other languages. I couldn't stumble and say, okay, what's HRQ mean? And what's NIH? And what are what's APIC organization, et cetera. And so I did a lot of studying and learning. And I think in order to build where you want to be, and I also knew I love to present. I wanted to be on Broadway. I love to problem solve. I like to create. So if I could look at what's going on in the business of healthcare, and reimbursement helped me because I understood how people got paid. So I know how they get paid. I know how they're motivated. PPS was happening. There were so many changes in regulation, but a lot of people don't dig deep to really understand. So if you understand, and then you know what we had as a company and what we needed as a company, you could kind of jerry rig the solutions and the ideas, not hypothetically because you heard something, but because you really knew it was important. And to add to that, really being and understanding the different types of customers. What does the executive group want? What do the feet on the street, the nurses need? What does a patient need? Because the patient is the customer of our customer.
Yeah. That is awesome. So let's talk about acronyms. Geez, that was the bane of my existence when I first started in healthcare, because there were thousands of them, and so I did the same thing. So we share a lot in common.
But the funny thing was, I would test myself. I would write a test, and then I'd get on a plane and I'd have to fill out all the answers. And then if I didn't get them right, I'd have to do it again and again and again. It was like thoughtless.
That's awesome. Let's talk about your role as Chief Market Solutions Officer. Your focus is expanding Medline's presence and relationships with some of the country's largest health systems. Why are relationships between suppliers and providers so important? And what is the key to a successful relationship?
Well, the whole market has changed. The days of dining out or golfing or entertainment, that's how people used to create relationships. To me today, the way to create a relationship is to have real value and to really work together for the interest of your partner. And so, unfortunately, to be brutally honest, I'm a vendor.
Yeah.
I don't think of myself as a vendor, but most people would say, you're a company that sells something to someone else. So you want something. You want something in exchange. You want to sell me something. Well, so it's very hard to create a relationship when you're put in that box. And so the reason I think the way I think you create those relationships is if you really figure out the problems that your customer has, and you go beyond the obvious solutions. Sometimes they're so hard. Like, how do you incorporate technology into a streamlined process? How do you redesign products so that the nurses every nurse can do the same thing, or every patient understands what to do? There's just a lot of all kinds of strange opportunities based upon what's going on in that health system. Yeah. But the health system can't solve their own problems by themselves.
Right.
And that's not because they don't have a lot of expertise. It's because that expertise is grounded in their core, what they do. So they take care of patients, and they do all kinds of special treatments, and they do surgeries, but they don't necessarily have engineers to design something. And they may not have manufacturing capabilities in, hundreds of different countries. They may not understand the quality components in developing something in other countries. There's a whole slew of things. So if you took the skill sets of a manufacturer or any other company, and you wrote a list of those skills, and you wrote a list of the skills of the hospital, we cannot create without each other.
Yeah.
Because I'm not using the product, they are, but they can't make it, I can. And so you just get like this huge bowl of skills that now you can develop from.
Yeah.
So that's why partnerships to me are important, because people do different things and can share that. But the most important thing about the relationship is trust.
Yeah.
And one of the ways, in some of the things that I've done recently that I've been able to develop trust better, is coming up with central tenets of the relationship, making a list. What makes me a good provider, and what makes you a good provider and makes me a good partner. And sometimes that means that we should be able to openly share our thoughts and not judge, that we should be honest and transparent, that we should have good debates, because debates are good, that we should try to understand each other's position, and that we should design what is the goal, what are we trying to do? Because if we always say, what are we trying to do? And when there's people that have, their own agendas, that you just like, okay, what are we trying to do? And how does that help you? And how does it help me to do something better?
Yep. It has to be a win-win, and it has the collaboration is critically important, right? And
Yes.
everyone should have a seat at the table. So thank you for sharing that. So Sue, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges in healthcare? And more importantly, what are some of healthcare's biggest opportunities?
Some of the challenges are the same things they've been for forever. And, I am really a believer in standardization, reducing waste, simplifying things. So, when you look at a lot of health systems, you might have 10 hospitals that merge with 5 more, that merge with 5 more, and everybody's doing their own thing. Sometimes we think everyone's following a policy, but when you really dig in, people are doing different versions and there's competitions within the hospital. So I think one of the biggest opportunities and challenges is, how do I streamline my system to perform and act like a system? How does every patient get the same care no matter what? That's hard because people are so busy in the day-to-day activities that looking at specific processes and trying to reduce variation is really difficult. But that, to me, is the lowest hanging fruit for efficiency and cost savings, et cetera. I also think that we need to simplify healthcare, not just for our, when you look at the staffing and those issues and nurses, we have these young nurses coming out. A lot of them have been trained during COVID and haven't had a lot of the experience on the floors. There's all kinds of challenges with whether they're passing their boards the first time or not. And really, we have to make things easier for those bedside nurses and not make it so difficult. And I'm looking in terms of products. We need to consider who's using it and how they're using it and how to make it easier and simpler. I think we also should consumerize products, because a lot of these products go home with the patients. And when they go home with the patients, they're even more confused what to do. And if we think about the consumer products market, things are packaged way differently. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for consumers. I think there's a huge opportunity for much more home testing, much more telehealth, and integrating what's going on with the telehealth with products and access to the patients, so that they don't have to go through shelves and shelves and travel and figure out things. I think technology has a huge place in streamlining, but that's also a lift we have to think of beyond maintaining our EMRs and the list of needs for Epic and reporting. How can I streamline the processes? And I think all of these things then can branch into the top issues of access, affordability, and quality.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about barriers to for women in career advancement. So we know, unfortunately, that there are real barriers to career advancement for women and minority groups in healthcare. Is it true, and I think this is true, that you were the first woman to join the C-suite at Medline?
Yes.
What would be then your advice for women and minorities who are preparing for their next step into an executive position?
Well, it's interesting because before this discussion, I had talked to some other female employees at Medline, and I asked them that question. And they said, well, wait a minute, Sue. I don't want to be considered a female. I want to be considered the best person for the job. And I think a lot of it, whether you're a woman or a minority, there's 2 parts to it. One is the mindset of the person and how you deal with that. And the other potentially is the mindset of the coworkers and the company. So I'm very lucky that my company is very supportive of women. They have their women employees resource groups. Lots of men are involved. I have men. I just had one earlier this week call me and say, I have 10 women on my staff and I want to understand them better. What can you do to help me? So we set up a mentoring call. So a lot of the environmental side of it with companies is really, does the company have a culture that recognizes minorities and women? Because that helps a lot. Doesn't solve all problems. Personally, if I wasn't in a company that did that, I would probably move to a company that had changed that way, because there may be some companies that never change and embrace that. But in addition to that, I think that women need to not victimize themselves as women. They have to do the best job they can. They should ask for things that they want, and not just like me forever. I only got asked once. The other times I said, I want that part. Can I do that? And then do the best job you can. Be the best at it that you can, so that you are in position. And, make yourself visible. I always believed when I ran marketing. Nobody knows what you do unless you tell them. And it's the same thing with individual people. You don't want to brag anywhere, but you also have to be exposed. Andy knew me to take me to lunch because I did so many presentations with him, and I had the opportunity to present in front of leadership people. Embrace those opportunities. If you're good at what you do and you have exposure, that is only going to help your position, because I think most companies are looking for more female involvement. But unfortunately, the women need to also rise to the occasion. We are looking and to advance women. But the women haven't necessarily had the path or been groomed for certain positions. And we have to put ourselves visible and take on more and do a great job.
To that point, exposure, I agree with you, is very important, right? Is the whole, it's not a trend, it's the reality of work from home, remote work. Is that going to impact or work against folks that want to continue to grow, and unfortunately they work remotely and they don't get the exposure?
So in this example, Fawn, are you saying that these people never get the exposure? They're always remote. Is that your example, or is
most oftentimes, if people are working remotely, how do they get the exposure that they need to continue to get the attention, right? To be visible to leadership, so that they can get considered for advancement?
Well, I guess I would say, like, for me, like, it's so funny. I was just in the office the other day, and I came up with a bunch of ideas. And by the time I got home last night, I think I had set up 6 meetings with different groups to discuss my ideas and to collaborate with multiple groups on things that people were interested in but weren't quite sure how to do, or something that I had done that I can share. I think sharing some of your work and volunteering. Can I do that presentation? Can I do this summary? Like, don't ask, put yourself out there so that you become the expert, and your boss says, well, Fawn knows this better than I do. Fawn, can you explain it? Because a lot of times the managers aren't going to know what I call the sausage making. Sausage making, if you can learn how to really communicate difficult subjects and show results of work, people will gravitate to that. They always gravitate to data and numbers and analytics. It's how you can consolidate that in a very high level and communicate it. And sometimes that takes practice. You might have to practice with different people to see, all right, what did you get out of this, these 3 slides, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to creating culture that supports women and set people up for success. How can leaders, both men and women, what can they do to continue to to create a culture that better supports
Well, I think
women?
the number 1 through 10 thing is your actions are more important than your words. And you have to show an example. So when I see, like, gosh, I had told you earlier that I was at one of your meetings and there was a gentleman that was the CEO of a health system who said, when your board looks like you need to make changes. That really stuck to me. I actually went back to Medline and I went to multiple different male executives and said, if we aren't having meetings that have females in every meeting, every executive meeting, every C-suite meeting, every key sales meeting with leaders, then we're showing our face as not the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what is going to, if you have just a group of men and not the diversity that you need, then your customers are going to make their own decisions about who you are and whether they want to do business with you. So I think actions are one of the biggest things. We do have our employee resource group, which has a ton of men in it, and it's really created an awareness, but it's also an individual responsibility. And I will say, Lucky, and I've mentioned this before, boy, I just went through 2.5 hours of bullying and diversity training and equality and all of these things. And it took a long time to finish. It was 267 slides, but everyone in the company is getting that training. And when you have a culture like that, that is trying to train and change the behaviors of the past, it's an evolution, but that's a certainly great place to start.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, for sharing that. So, professionally, what do you consider as your greatest professional achievement and one that shaped your career?
Well, this is going to sound redundant because after 39 years, there's a long list. So I have so many things that I learned from. Probably I learned more from the worst years when I wanted to cry every night. And it was just so hard. But those jobs that I had that were so hard gave me the opportunity to be offered the chief marketing officer position. And so if I had to kind of shorten the list, my greatest achievement was achieving that role. And from that role, developing the job and the ability to change so much of the direction of the company. There was never anything clinical. It's so funny now they talk about clinical solutions and, redesigns and all these things with pressure injuries and surgical site infection. That was never a part of the dialogue. Now we have specialty sales forces and specialty groups and specialty programs. I have to say, well, if that didn't occur back in 2003 and I didn't take that journey, we would be a different company today. So I'm extremely proud that I worked hard to get the opportunity, that I was actually asked. It was like being asked to the prom.
Right.
But not knowing and not having boundaries, I developed what I thought it should be, and it's been absorbed by the company. And now with the young people coming in and the people taking on new roles, that's what they know the company is. And they're eager to, how do we update, learn, how do we keep futuristic and keep innovating, which is, what more could you ask for than to inspire such change? Ah!
Congratulations. We spent a lot of time talking, and it's been such an amazing, wonderful conversation. My last question to you is really simple. If you could go back in time 10 years, what would you tell yourself about leadership that you did not know today? Oh, then, I'm sorry.
All right, there's 2 answers to this. It's going to sound really weird. The first one is, it's okay to be nice. I grew up for so many years, I hope nobody takes offense to this, surrounded by men. and, having to be heard and having to act like a man and speak like a man. And, I felt like I had to be buttoned up all the time. I had to be aggressive with ideas I had to be heard. And I had to know everything better than anyone. I had to be the best I could be. I had to overdo. I had to do 200%. And that's just the way it was. But I don't, and in that process, you might be too aggressive. You might be somewhat demeaning to people. You aren't as kind as you are inside because you're doing the job. And so I've learned that it's okay. You can be nice, you can be kind, and you can still achieve things. And the other thing I learned, which took a while, was mentoring is so important. I'm going to cry because, when you're so busy and taxed and so much pressure, the easiest thing to do is to do it yourself. I mean, you would try and you say, okay, can you put this together? And it comes back. And, I had a hard time sometimes communicating. Like my normal East Coast thing would be, oh, I hate this. And then the person would be all upset. So then I tried, I'm not really feeling it, but then they didn't understand what I thought. And so mentoring was very difficult because it just meant it'll take me 10 times longer to do something. But what I didn't realize is if I could just get through the mentoring steps and be patient and work it and understand, then I might have 20 people that are excellent and not having to depend on myself so much. And so now I'm like a mentoring guru. I just was asked today by 2 people if I would be their life coach. I mean, it seems to be a thing, like, what's this life coach thing? But, it amazes me because building people is hard, but building people is the right thing to do. And so lessons learned, I should have taken a lot more time building, and I would have spent a lot more time less time doing it myself. And I probably could have been nicer along the way. So now I'm a nicer person and I mentor.
Well, you've always been nice to me and you've been a mentor to me. So thank you. Thank you for your patience, understanding, and trust and friendship. You've been an influence in my life. Thank you.
Well, Fawn, likewise.
And thank you to everyone else for joining us today. As always, I look forward to seeing you on the next Fridays with Fawn. And I hope you'll join us at this year's Women Leaders in Healthcare Conference. It is scheduled on August 9th through 11th in Chicago. So thanks again and have a wonderful weekend.